and provide support to the poorest in whatever way. Some of us may agree, may not agree, but that is essential over a period of time. Because if our growth is not perceived as inclusive, it cannot last. We have to have social harmony over a period of time. We don't want Maoists and Marxists springing up. We have to actually contain them over a period of time and not allow them to become a major force in the country. So I think we need to balance, on one hand, the economic development and inclusiveness. And I think economic development will come if you free the government, individual to do what they want to do and provide basic infrastructure with the policies.
I come from minerals and metal sector, particularly steel. Now what we are doing, we have a lot of wish list as a country. A couple of years back, we said that by 2020, we'll be producing 200 million ton of steel against current capacity of around 90. Except the wish, what all we have. Now to set up a steel plant, we require large land, water, and iron ore. Now, where it is today, getting land for setting up a large project is almost impossible, or it may take anything between 3 years to 5 years or 7 years to get that land. Even if you get land, where is the water? And if you want to set up a mineral-based plant, a steel plant, if you do not get iron ore, why you will set up in India? Because the second part, energy or coking coal or electricity, coking coal is 100% imported, except barring certain small quantities available with Tata Steel or SAIL. So that you have to import. Iron ore, if you get at the international price in India, where infrastructure is again very poor, there are many other destinations, including some of the destinations in West, which are much better to set up this industry. On the other hand, we have permitted to export iron ore ruthlessly without any value addition. While China has put restrictions on export of basic minerals. So much so that on many of these, there's almost export duty of 40%. So you do value addition in the country. People have set up large manufacturing bases. Country has created a very large infrastructure. There is a very large support to the industry in terms of whether manpower, in terms of roads, in terms of ports, in terms of allocation of minerals, and the people could set up large capacity plants taking care of local consumption and export, and those plants are highly competitive. Now in India, now if you want to grow, how do you grow? You can't set up a plant, it may take 5 years, 10 years, and eventually we may be importing most of the metals. Same is the case with the aluminum, bauxite is the issue there. Now, while vocational training, skilled manpower is definitely an issue, but as Mr. Habil has rightly said, that once you are ready with the infrastructure, then these things are important, but you can set up your own training centers, you can create your own manpower. That is a much smaller cost, basically because people are available, people with certain basic level of skill are available, you can train and you can utilize. But until we sort out at the regulatory level the allocation of natural wealth of the country on a very transparent basis, I think it's very difficult to grow manufacturing in this sector.
I would agree with him and endorse all your views. In our industry also it's the same issue where we are exporting natural resources and we are having to import all of the same back at an inverted duty structure, which we've been addressing the government completely to deaf ears. The other take what I would take is, if you take our industry, I think at times we've seen in the yesteryears, about 10 to 12 years ago, we had the renminbi at about, we're comparing China, the renminbi at approximately 8.4 and with no anti-dumping into India. The minute the anti-dumping was established in our industry, in 10 years we've seen the industry grow from 2,500 crores to a lot of people's surprise, it's almost as large as the paint industry today, which is approximately 22,000 crores is the size of the industry within 10 years. Today, with that happening, we've built economies of scales, and we're probably proud to say that we're one of the few industries who have actually give China for the run for the money. Although 6,000 million square meters of tiles are produced there and 600 million are produced here. Today, I think at this particular juncture, what we're facing is the skewed laws on taxation. And GST, which we've been talking about for so many years, if that had to happen, it would exponentially grow the industry. And why I say that is, currently we're at a fairly large base where we are almost the second largest in the world, without comparing to China. We're second largest in the world. But here we are 2 or 3 brands in India which are competing with approximately 500-600 more brands, which the business model there is to evade duty. And now if this duty structure had to be rationalized, which we've been talking for so many years, it would have an exponential growth in the economy and in the industry, where our products are really an essential product. In the government's mind, they used to be an elitist product till 15 years ago. But over the years, as economies of scale built up, it's become an essential product, and it's become pretty much a hygiene issue, where urbanization, be it a mandir, or be it a hospital, or a school, or a mall, the product has to be applied. How do you grow beyond the point if you're having to face with completely skewed taxation structures?
I think we need to look for solutions rather than highlighting the problem that we have been highlighting. I believe labor productivity is a major issue. We know that India's incremental capital output ratio is 4.4 compared to China's 3.7. That's a great advantage that we have. But because of the poor labor productivity, China has been almost 2.8 to 3 times that of India. The cost per man hour in India is higher. So I believe that it's an age of government, and public-private partnership, and we believe that we need to launch that productivity campaign all over the country. It has to be a national obsession that we need to improve our quality, we need to improve our productivity, and the government and the private sector has to work hand in hand. Another thing I would like to highlight is that we have found over the years that we have not been operating at the higher end of the value chain. I would talk about exports, like almost 50% of India's exports target only 11% of the world trade, which means that sectors that constitute around 50% of Indian exports are basically the sectors which constitute 11% of the world trade. We are not operating at the higher end of the value chain. We are not into machinery, not into computer peripherals, like auto components. So that is the area where I think we need to focus. We need to add value. Of course, in manufacturing sector, in terms of value addition, we are not far behind. We are only 10th in the world, but then there is a lot to catch up. Another thing that I would like to tell, that the bigger solution could be that we need to adopt a cluster-based approach. And I believe the national manufacturing policy, advocating for national investment in manufacturing zone, is a big game changer. Because in the cluster-based approach, basically the disability that we have, infrastructure disability regarding availability of power or road, or maybe the logistics, that all gets minimized. So we need to go for cluster-based approach. That would probably be that will give an added impetus to the Indian manufacturing.
Okay. I agree with him that I think it's pretty well known about the infrastructure issues, the problems what the country faces. And I think, as someone earlier said, even if you're on steroids, it's probably the next 15, 20 years by the time you get the infrastructure up and you get everything else. But in the meantime, how do you take the nation ahead, and how do you take the country forward, right? So there clearly is a national interest technology in, let's say, space defense, which needs to be more from a security national standpoint. We need to kind of focus and invest in that. And I think there has to be a certain focus now on what I would define it as social technologies or social manufacturing, which will be areas like water, food, healthcare, energy. Now, I think we got to make a very, very conscious choice in the country that here are some 5, 6 areas which we need to become the best in the world by actually investing in these areas for manufacturing. I mean, I heard the doctor talk about why is the pharma industry more successful compared to, let's say, other natural manufacturing industries. I think there's a consumption. There's a consumption because healthcare is fundamental to any human society. Similarly, auto sector, right? Transportation is fundamental. Food is fundamental. But I think we haven't actually made sufficient investments in these sectors to say that, yes, India is going to be the world's best manufacturing base over here. Then there's these in-between manufacturing technologies of saying that between all these social technologies and the country defense and country space, there are other technologies in manufacturing which we really need to kind of now think about creating clusters, creating skill development, creating other areas. So I think we've got to have a much more cohesive approach for India. And I think this India-China bashing should end, I think, you know. I mean, every time we end up comparing, you know, how is China and how is India, I don't think so we should be doing that. We should be charting a session, a path for us, what is right for the nation and what we need to be doing. I think if we did that, the infrastructure issues, the regulatory issues, the tax issues, everything will have to be sorted out. I don't think so we can beat it more to death now. I think we've beaten it enough to death. But I think further than that, I think we need to have this vision by saying, okay, here are a few areas, we got to be best in the world. If a country is offering us technology, or if a country wants to have access to this market, then let's ensure that the technology also comes in with it, because you've got to leapfrog the technology. I mean, the other day I was in a session between, I think it was an Indo-French session, I think. Two economies, India and France, you know, France having a $3 trillion economy, India having a $2 trillion economy, and the trade between both the countries is $20 billion, right? $10 billion France exports to India, and what do they export? They export, you know, high-tech fighter subsystems and components. And what do we export? We export carpets, dry fruits, etc. I think there is a serious imbalance over here. When you want to give access to markets, we must ensure that technology is put in, manufacturing is actually brought in, and the rest of it, of actually, you know, building up the infrastructure, you know, clusters, as the gentleman just now pointed out. I think all that has got to go. But I think we've got to have a bigger vision of saying, you know, how do we want to drive this?
I think the fundamental call we have to take is, we want to be the Germany of the East or the factory to the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the call comes, and I think innovation plays a very, very important role. We have to move up the value chain, and I think create value for the business. I would say it's from made in India to created in India. That's what we're trying to work on.
And to add to what he said, that, you know, we need to stop constant comparison with China.
Absolutely.
Every country has to have its own homespun unique solution. You know, like we are a multicultural, multilinguistic, democratic society with a lot of room for consensus. We can't be a Singapore or a Hong Kong. But then, yes, we have our strength. We must recognize our strength. We should minimize our weakness and latch on to our strength and move ahead.
So what I hear from the team is that despite the constraints, obviously if the constraints are removed, we can substantially go ahead and get a lot of benefits. But there are also still under these constraints, we can probably work on certain things on the labor part, productivity part, coming together and trying to make the change. We talked about several things now on innovation, and I will just pick up on this part of innovation. We say that innovation is an important part to the manufacturing strategy and probably can change India. We have cases like Tata Nano, where people would see that we have made a significant change. We have the pharma industry, which has done significant works on the generics, and I think Wokhard has more than 1,500 plus patents globally attempted for, and 178 which are already filed. And there are several other such cases which would be there. But the question to the team is, we talk about innovation, and we say this is important. But if I were to go out and look at across the globe, and even internally, and it's quite interesting to see in the domestic consumption, the new roti kapda makan, I would say, are you need a fridge, you need a TV, you need some of these other things which are there, or the mobiles which are there. But if you observe a little more carefully, you will observe many of these, though manufactured in India, would be done by some of the international firms who have come to India. So coming back to the point on innovation, if we say India has to be innovative, if India has the entrepreneurship that we are talking about, what is it that is really required to garner this innovation and make it happen? If I were to just pick up one of the statements from what you talked about, for India, made in India, by India. So how does that happen?
You see, first and foremost thing what we can do in India, which is the basics, benchmark yourself. Once you benchmark yourself against the globally best and try to achieve there, adopt that and then surpass. Now, this is there with certain large corporates in the country, but it is missing largely in many of the small and medium enterprises, which is the backbone of industry, and a good quantum of production comes from there. And wherever, like particularly in auto ancillary and all, where they are supported heavily by the parent, something, a lot of good things are happening. But rest of the industry, including the medium-sized plants in the steel industry or others, I find there is a big gap in terms of productivity, efficiency, energy consumption, and environment cleanliness. There's a big gap. And many of the things we take it for granted that in India it will be like this, and it's okay. We can manage it. But eventually it has a big impact on your quality, on your cost, on your attitude, which finally transfers the type of product you and services you will provide. So I've seen now many of the companies, if they start benchmarking, it doesn't cost much. It doesn't cost much, rather you will save a lot of money to achieve, once you achieve that benchmark company or benchmark country, and then you know what is the way forward. Whether energy is the key issue in your business, transportation is the key issue, adopting the new technology is the key issue, and then it will give us, make you much more enlightened. What are the ways forward? And then you have to, in a very structured manner, invest certain things, even in a small manner, to innovate new processes, new modules, and surpass what it is there world over. But it has to be much more in a structured manner, much more, and it has to be top driven, and it can definitely happen. I have seen personally, I am witness to it, and it can save enormous things. So much so, in one of the company, we have saved 4% of our turnover in energy alone, just energy alone. And the company was running even before. It's running today also, but then such a